It's Wednesday, 25 January 2017, about 5:27 p.m. Eastern Time. Just wanted to give you a 3 to 5 minute rundown on the news today. Today, Donald Trump visited the DHS, which, as you may know, he visited the CIA on Saturday. So this is kind of his second official physical trip where I'm showing up, letting you know who's in charge. And there's a reason why he went to the CIA first and then the DHS second. Those two organizations, DHS was formed after 9/11, the false flag 9/11, which they knew before 9/11 ever happened that they were going to form DHS because they wanted to consolidate their power and their control over those law enforcement agencies within the federal government. So they wanted to create that DHS for the criminal cabal chokehold, let's say. Well, Donald Trump went there today, as well as to the CIA, which also suffered the same fate, especially after 9/11. And he went there to let them know who's in charge and to, I'm sure, oversee and start the process of removing the bad eggs. And I have all the confidence in the world in General John Kelly, four-star Marine. He was actually, I believe, Mattis's boss over in Iraq, in the Middle East somewhere. And I have the utmost confidence in General John Kelly to straighten things out at DHS because there's a lot of problems there, including FEMA, who I believe are perpetrators, at least one government agency that is a perpetrator of false flags. Particularly, I think they took the lead in Sandy Hoax, where no children were killed, and the objective was to vilify citizens who own AR-15 rifles, which are not assault rifles by definition. Anyway, let's move on. Trump executive order, no more catch and release at the border. No more of that game where we catch you and then we release you or else we bus you to some sanctuary city. I mean, come on. Either we have immigration laws or we don't. If we're not going to enforce them, then let's change them. I'd much rather live in a nation where we just say, hey, the borders are open, come on in, by law, as opposed to a nation that supposedly has immigration laws, and yet we don't enforce them. Because you know what that does? It undermines all the other laws. Doesn't that make sense? Moving on. Trump is moving forward with this wall, and the construction will start within months, which is pretty much light speed for anything the government's doing. I would like to make a suggestion to President Trump that he implement 3D construction printing technology, which I've been up on for several years now. I was in touch with this professor out in California who was on top of this. He was on the cutting edge of this years ago because I'm a construction contractor, Class A Virginia construction contractor, and telling him, hey, I was interested in working with him if he needed people to apply his theory of machinery in the field. I'd love to work with him. And then I engaged him regarding hempcrete, which hempcrete is like concrete, but it has hemp, which gives fibrous strength. If that's a word, fibrous. It is now. It is environmentally friendly, very environmentally friendly to grow. You don't have to rotate crops. It's actually supposedly healthy for the land that you're growing the hemp on. Extremely renewable. The stuff grows very quickly, and no, you can't smoke it to catch a buzz. It's industrial grade hemp. Okay, it's not Sensimilia. So I've heard a couple people say that when you mention hemp, and it's like, look, let's back up for a second. Actually, John Hurst, and go check all the facts. John Hurst, who was a newspaper mogul back in the 30s and 40s, and he also wisely had invested in pulp paper production plants to make newspaper for his newspaper conglomerate. was actually behind the whole Reefer Madness movie. And the true objective was not to really vilify marijuana per se for personal use. It really was to vilify hemp, the whole strain of that plant as a whole, and kind of draw a connection between the crazy marijuana and hemp, because he knew that hemp was a superior product, raw material, I should say, for producing paper. Well, he had already heavily invested in wood pulp plants, so he doesn't want that coming about. So that's why marijuana ever ended up getting vilified in the first place. Thanks, John Hurst. Imagine that, a greedy businessman behind some Bravo Sierra. Some sad news. Actually, let me first say this. Sean Spicer denies that the administration shut down the access to social media by the EPA. That's interesting. I wouldn't blame him for doing that. Actually, I thought, hey, I would be doing the same thing to consolidate power, because as far as I'm concerned, the EPA is somewhat of a rogue agency that just uses these thousands of regulations to suffocate anybody they so desire. You're violating 2 or 3 of their rules at any given time that they establish, that they write, and they enforce as they so desire. Well, I want to shut them down, and I want to, if I'm the new president, and I want to get a grip on that agency and find out what's going on there, and make sure they're on the same page for my objectives regarding the mission of that agency. But apparently, even though I think it would have been justified in doing that for short term, shutting down the EPA's access to social media, apparently the Sean Spicer, press secretary, is denying that's the case. So perhaps that's just a rumor done internally to make Trump look fascist. Either way, I don't think it succeeds. Unfortunately, sad news. Mary Tyler Moore, dead at 80. I grew up watching the Mary Tyler Moore show, and then you got that girl, and then the Lou Grant. It all spun off. But in hindsight, I love Mary Tyler Moore, so this is not a knock on her. Great lady. But in hindsight, looking back, that whole series of that girl, Mary Tyler Moore, the whole independent woman, doesn't need a man, doesn't need a family, can be happy, satisfied, and fulfilled with the professional life, I believe that was all part of the cabal agenda thrown out there. I'm not saying that can't happen, but there really seemed to be, and it was in tandem with the women's live movement, there really seemed to be a concerted effort, which I think the Mary Tyler Moore show, that girl, and several others were a part of, that tried to contribute to that narrative of, division between the sexes. The cabal does everything they can to divide us and to attack the strength of America, which is the nuclear family. And that was when they were full on assault. So that's what I believe the Mary Tyler Moore show was about. But I'm happy for Mary Tyler Moore in that she's now liberated into higher dimensions and going back and already realized her true self again. Interesting news out of the Pentagon. They're going to do a fly-off between the A-10 Warthog, my favorite aircraft, military aircraft. And I'm not a big war mule, but I got to tell you, if I was a pilot, I want to be in an A-10 Warthog. Because these things are flying tanks. They literally are. They literally built this aircraft around that 30 millimeter, I think it's a 30 millimeter cannon. Unbelievable weapon for ground support, which is also why I love it so much. Because it's designed to support troops on the ground and be an anti-armor, take out tanks, that sort of thing. Which also, of course, supports troops on the ground. Because if you're an infantry guy, you don't want to run into a tank unless you have some armor or something. So they're doing a fly-off between that and the F-35. I guess they're doing it regarding ground support. And just to give you a rundown, the Fairchild Republic Thunderbolt A-10 Warthog, which is what we're talking about, costs about $12 million. Look, maybe my number's off, so let's bump that up to $20 million. but according to the numbers I have, they cost about $12 million. The F-35, which is the boondoggle, tries to do everything, can't do anything right aircraft that has done nothing but line the pockets of the military-industrial complex and the secret space program and the cabal as a whole, costs about $100 million a unit, or about 9 times what the A-10 Warthog costs. I think an F-16 cost maybe $15 million, and there's been lots of, let's just say, I don't want to say testimony, let's just say testimony, because I can't think of a better word at the moment, from military experts that the F-16 also does a much better job in ground support than the F-35, because apparently the F-35 is not very maneuverable. Both the A-10 and the F-16 are extremely maneuverable, extremely capable aircraft platforms for ground support. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, F-35 is not good at ground support. Is it good at air superiority? Well, it's nowhere near as good as the F-22 Raptor, and we've had those birds flying and functional for years now. So why not, instead of having this F-35 crap, we got F-18 Super Hornets on carriers. They're doing a great job for now. But if you want a new aircraft for the carrier to replace the Super Hornets, then develop that aircraft specifically for Super Hornet replacement on aircraft carriers. Okay? If you want air superiority, well, you got it with the F-22 Raptor. Okay? Which we spend, I don't know, I think $120 million a unit on. Not a cheap program, but an extremely effective aircraft. And well worth it, I think. And I was sitting here scratching my head after the F-22 was well underway and may have even been deployed when they come out with this F-35 crap. And all these different defense contractors have their hand in the pot. It's nothing but a gigantic boondoggle, and it's a piece of crap aircraft. So anyway, I'm confident the A-10 is going to win that fly-off. F-16 will win the fly-off. F-22 will win the fly-off against the F-35. I mean, at what point this nation has already put in hundreds of billions into that program. Do we just cut it loose? Maybe we do once President Donald Trump releases zero-gravity propulsion technology, which will make all of those aircraft obsolete. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to the Light Reports summary for the day. A little longer than I wanted to. I'm trying to keep these down to like 7 minutes, but you know I can ramble on. So we hit 13 minutes today. I'll try to make it shorter tomorrow. But there's a lot of news going on right now because Trump is whether you agree with what he's doing or not, a lot of things are happening in the early days of his administration. Neil Wolf, Light Reports signing off. Have a good evening. Love you all. Goodbye.